the City Council meeting. All of you that are here tonight in person and all of you that are home watching, thank you very much for your interest. May we have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Peterson?
Here.
Councilmember Termini?
Here.
Councilmember Bertrand?
Here.
Councilmember Bottorff?
Here.
And Mayor Harlan.
Here. Will everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This meeting is cablecast live on Charter Communications, Cable TV Channel 8, and AT&T UVerse Channel 99. It's being recorded and will be rebroadcast on the following Wednesday at 8 a.m. and on Saturday following the first rebroadcast at 1 p.m. on Channel 71 and Comcast Channel 25. Meetings can also be viewed at the city's website, www.cityofcapitola.org. Our technician tonight is Scott Gray. Thank you very much, Scott. And as a reminder, please turn off your cell phones and please sign in if you'd like your name spelled correctly when you come up to speak. We have a presentation tonight. We have introduction of our new maintenance worker. So, Eddie Ray Garcia. Good evening and welcome.
Good evening. It's my pleasure to introduce our newest employee, Thomas Gonzalez. Thomas was born in Gilroy and raised in San Jose. Last year he worked with us as a seasonal employee. On his days off, he enjoys working on his cars and his motorcycles, as well as spending time with his family, his wife Sandra, and his two children, Sarah and Jordan. And I believe his father, Brian, is here also. Anyway, Mrs. Thomas.
Welcome.
Hello, thank you guys for that. Thank you guys. We're ready to work, and you have a beautiful city. I'd like to keep it that way and keep it safe, and here to help the best I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're very happy to have you.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Nice meeting you. See you on the street.
Next is a report on closed session from our city attorney, Mr. Kandati.
Thank you, Mayor Harlan, members of the City Council. We had one item on this evening's closed session agenda. That was the case of Water Rock Construction versus the City of Capitola and the related cross action. The council received a report from the city attorney's office on that item, but there was no reportable action.
Thank you. Additional materials.
Yes, we received 5 items. One for item 9A, which is an email public comment, and then 4 items related to 9C. 2 are revisions to the attachments to the budget resolution, and then the full revised proposed budget with an accompanying memo, and finally a memorandum from the Public Works Department regarding emergency repairs to the wharf.
Thank you very much. Additions and deletions to the agenda.
So staff does have one addition we would propose to tonight's agenda. It's briefed in the attached material that the city clerk referenced here earlier. It has to do with emergency repairs necessary to get the floating docks working on the wharf. If you so choose to add this item to your agenda, you would need to make a finding by a 2/3 vote that the item came up after the agenda was printed, which it did, and that the matter requires urgent attention, which it does, in order to get our floating docks and access to our buoy field open.
Madam Mayor, I so move. Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So we'll add that as 9C.
That'll actually be heard as part of item 9C.
9C. Okay, great. Great, thank you. This is the time for public comments now on any item not on the agenda. If it's on the agenda, please wait till we get to it, and then you can come up then and speak. So this is the time for anything else that you'd like to tell us. Any information, questions, speeches? Okay, then we'll go on to City Council comments. Kristen, do you have any?
Yeah, just quickly, I'd like to say that we had our Capitola Women's Leadership Mixer on Monday. It was fantastic. We had about 30 women show up, and I think we have some interest in several of them who are interested in being more involved in the city and in their community, so that was very exciting. Thank you to everyone who came to that, and hopefully there will be more. And also that this weekend, the Capitola Classic Car Show is going to be happening on both Saturday and Sunday. I'm really looking forward to it, and I encourage everyone to come and check it out.
Great. Mike, do you have any?
Along the same lines, the Foundation is putting on the Officer Appreciation Dinner June 19th and 20th at Paradise Beach Grill. I know they have the tickets at Paradise. I think the PD also has some tickets, so you can purchase them there. $10 of every ticket goes towards the Foundation, and what we do is we purchase dinners on us for all the police officers. So these 2 nights you get a chance to sit down, have dinner, talk with our police officers, frontline people, and it'll be a good time. It's a great dinner, and it's moderately priced at $45 a head. Let's see, we had our first concert last night. It was cold but exciting. We had a nice fun group out there. We probably had 150 people, and they stuck it out to the end, dancing to stay warm, and a good time was had by all. And that is all I have, Madam Mayor.
Thank you.
Yes. So I missed the Capitola annual blood drive, but I did donate a week earlier, and you can't donate that close. But I recommend that people consider donating blood. I think what brought it to my attention, the reason why I'm mentioning it right now, is a lot of people have heard about the Pulse issue. I think that was in Florida, right? Yeah. And there's this one person that survived. First of all, no one could get to rescue him, so while he was on the floor, I believe in the bathroom, he was bleeding for a considerable period of time. He took 40 pints of blood to survive. And so that's what each one of us can do to help a person in need. It may not be such a dire circumstance, but there are situations like that that all of us potentially may have at some point. And it truly is a gift that a person can give to another person. A lot of, that I've been talking for probably over a year a little bit about trying to do something about the odor that we smell often around CVX and Nob Hill due to the pump station we have there. So for some of you who don't know that is a sanitation facility, and there's a pumping facility there and a storage area there for the refuse that comes in. A couple of the lines that I guess there's one under Park Avenue, for instance. So we did have a presentation. The engineer came from a sanitation district about 3 months ago or 4 months ago, I'm not sure at this point, and did a presentation about a project that they have. Now, the problem with this project is that they've been unable to achieve funding for it, and it's been going back and forth in terms of timeliness of applications and missing deadlines because 2 different applications had to be married together to completely fund this project. So it didn't look like anything was going to happen for a long time. So I suggested to a number of the representatives on that board that we need to separate this project out. So not wait to do a huge force main project, which is going to be considerable in terms of time to complete, but just look at the odor control aspect. And we found a great partner with Beatrice. She's an engineer, project engineer at the Sanitation District, and she did find a solution for that. So I'd like to report today that Sanitation Board, which Stephanie is on, approved $750,000 to upgrade the monitoring system and also to add a segment that will inject 2 different kinds of chemicals into the system so that sulfide odor is not going to be generated. So we have great hopes for this, and what that means is when this project is completed, the smell that we currently get around Nob Hill, CVX area, also along Park Avenue and McGregor. So you probably notice these green boxes along the street. and that's a venting system. So the chemicals that I'm talking about, and I'll get into that a little bit later, will be injected into the system at different points along the bay. So the system is rather large, and anywhere where sewage flows into the system is a potential generation spot, and it builds up as it tends to go to Santa Cruz. So these chemicals will be injected at various spots along the system, which will dampen down and hopefully eliminate the smell. So we have yet to see what the results of that will be. But the beauty of the system is it can be monitored, adjustments can be made in real time, and so as the system gets out of balance, it can be adjusted so it's back into balance. I did meet the engineer today who's going to work on that system. The company's called EcoWatts. I can't pronounce it very well. But anyway, he's willing to come here and explain that in greater detail so we have a better idea of what is being planned. So I have a lot of confidence that this plan will work. I'd also like to say that sanitation has come forward, and the engineer B that I'm talking about, she is aghast at the fact that we haven't dealt with this before, and she put a lot of effort into making this happen. So my hat's off to sanitation. Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
Okay, Ed?
I have no comments.
I have just a couple. Today is World Oceans Day, and around the world, people are celebrating the ocean and trying to keep it as healthy as possible. So we're not really doing anything here. Hopefully here, every day is Ocean Day. But it's a good reminder to visit Long Marine Laboratory, visit the aquarium, get involved with Save Our Shores, do a beach cleanup. It's really fun. You meet really neat people doing it. Support O'Neill Sea Odyssey, and go to the Sanctuary Exploration Center down across from the wharf if you haven't been there. It's been open a couple years now, and it's fabulous. It's free. So I would encourage you to do that. On another note, I wanted to announce that Frank Perry was given a special award by the Santa Cruz Natural History Museum, and it's the Laura Heacock Award. And Laura Heacock was the founder of the Santa Cruz Natural History Museum, I think. She wasn't the founder. She was a lighthouse keeper, and her father was a lighthouse keeper in Santa Cruz, and then she took it over. And Frank wrote a wonderful story about her in the Santa Cruz magazine that we get, the free magazine. Fabulous, really interesting article about her. So they gave him, and Frank is our museum curator, if you don't know him, and they gave it to him to recognize and thank him and reward him for doing so many fabulous exhibits that he's done, for all the writing that he's done, for all the programs that he's put on, all the walking tours he's put on. And so that's our Frank. He's very famous around the county, and I just wanted to let you know about that. On the last note, I wanted to just give a little tribute to our Lance Elliott, who passed away last week. Yeah. Lance he grew up in Santa Cruz his whole life. He started working for the city in January 1989, and he worked until April 1st of this year. He went to Harbor High School. He went to Cabrillo College. He worked for Burdix. How many people remember Burdix appliances?
I do.
How many people bought something from Burdix? He started out after high school, after he worked for a few years, working for Burdix as a deliveryman and warehouse person. And he did that for 2 years, and then he became their service desk manager, and he did that job for 3 years, and then he moved over to a construction company, and he was the project manager and construction estimator, doing blueprints, framing, finish work, plumbing, electrical, foundations, purchasing, receiving, bookkeeping, filing, employee supervision, competitive bidding, and so forth. And he worked for them for 5 years, and then in January of '89, he came here to Capitola, where he was for 28 years. And his background shows you why he was such a beloved employee. He could do everything. He did it well. He did it with such great spirit, and was a mentor to many of our employees. And we lowered the flag to half-mast in his honor. And I just wanted to say a few words and give others a chance, if they knew him also, to say what a wonderful guy he was, and we will certainly miss him. So with that,
I have one more item,
Yes.
Madam Mayor. I would like to ask the council to agendize the next meeting, our mayor signing on to the mayors for the Paris Accord. I think that the Commission on the Environment should be brought forward at that meeting to give us a report on it. If they don't have a meeting scheduled between now and then, that they call one, and that our city being on the edge of the ocean, it's even more significant that we hold to certain principles, and we can talk more about it if the council agrees to agendize it, but I think it's important.
yeah,
I agree.
yeah. Council comments, more.
Yeah, just one more. My eyes not be very good, but I think I see the fire chief in the back. Yes, and I understand that you are going to be elevated to a full-time chief coming up pretty soon? You already are. That already happen and I missed that?
No, the swearing in
Oh,
is
I thought I got an
I didn't
invitation.
know.
It's coming up pretty soon, right? So it's the official pinning or?
Friday at 6 o'clock at the 17th Avenue Station. Come and join the chief who's just received the honor of the permanent chief, fire chief.
Yeah, well, I
So
look
we're
forward
very,
to that.
Very happy.
Yes, good.
All are invited. It's open to the public. Yeah.
Okay, I
6
just
o'clock
wanted to
Friday
point
the
that out.
16th.
This is probably a very important move on your part, and great.
Treasurer's comments.
Thank you, Mayor Harlan. So I'm also the chairman of the Environmental Committee, and so I'm unclear what our task was. You want an opinion on the Paris Accords?
Yes. Well, we want to sign on as a city because we think that the action plan that they lay out in the Paris Accord is significant, especially to a city that is most vulnerable to sea level rise. And we want to make sure that the Commission on the Environment gives us information that helps us make a decision to sign on with that.
We've gotten some emails from citizens asking me to do that. I'm happy to do it, but I'd like the Commission on the Environment to make that recommendation so they can be in the loop.
So I'll be happy to bring that up as an action item, but are you asking for a presentation on the contents of the climate accord?
Not necessarily, but we'd like to get the Commission on the Environment to buy in with us on this because it's an important step. It's being done by hundreds of cities around the country, and we think it's appropriate for the Commission on the Environment to speak on its behalf.
All right. Could I ask Steve maybe to talk to Danielle, and we can schedule a meeting between now and...
My notes here.
Thank you, sir. I was going to talk about the budget and put together an argument about it making more sense to pay down a 3.25% Pac Cove loan than to take that same money and put it into a savings account that only gets 1 to 2%. However, I've failed in the argument already, and I don't have Ed Bodorf's silver tongue. And since I learned today that we have a new finance director, I figure perhaps it's better to coordinate with him, and maybe at the next budget cycle we can have something that makes a little more sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff announcements or comments?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I would like to announce that we have this evening our new finance director in attendance. He is not yet an employee of the city. He's just here visiting, got a chance to meet staff and introduce him around. I wanted to introduce him to council. So this is Jim Mulberg. Jim comes to the city of Capitola most recently from the Elk Grove Water District, where he oversaw a $14 million annual operating budget and a capital budget of $2.5 million. He managed the district's debt and investment portfolios. He was served as a finance manager and treasurer for that organization. Previously, he's worked for other special districts, other cities throughout California, brings a wealth of experience in both city and government finance. Went through a competitive application process, and at the end of that, Jim was really clearly the choice for the city. So I wanted to introduce Jim and give him a chance to say a few words to the council.
Thank you, Jamie.
Evening and welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. It's an honor to be here this evening. I'm really excited and looking forward to officially starting on the 26th. And equally, my wife and I have been enjoying coming to Capitola and Santa Cruz for 25 plus years, so we're both excited to become part of the community.
Cool.
Welcome.
Yeah. Glad you're here.
Thank you. Me too.
I heard you're looking at houses and such.
We've been casually looking for the last 2 months, but the true kickoff is tomorrow morning.
Ah, okay.
It gets serious tomorrow.
Oh, cool.
Good luck with that.
All right, thank you.
Don't let the car show distract you, okay? That's-
No, we'll try not to.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for
It's going to be a fun weekend here.
It might even be warmer.
Could happen.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments before we go on? The next item is the consent calendar. These are relatively minor items that we take in one motion unless someone wants to discuss it and vote on it separately. So would any council member like to pull any consent item?
I'll move consent.
Second.
Would any member of the public like to pull an item? Any discussion on the items? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item is 8, general government items. Item A is the trial program of Hill Street vehicles. How many people are here from Hill Street? Welcome. Thanks for coming back.
All right.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight we'll be talking about Hill Street, predominantly focusing on the block between Capitol Avenue and Rosedale. And this is a presentation that give kudos to Kimley Horn and Associates who helped me put together this presentation and was presented at the February 16th workshop. That's why that date's on there. Most of the slides came from that workshop until we get to the end when we talk about the results from that, all that. So I want to thank Frederick Ventner and Derek Wu who put this together for me. So Kimley Horn was retained to look at Hill Street and that block and address both vehicle-to-vehicle conflicts, and I have some graphics that show what I'm talking about there, and also to improve pedestrian and bicycle access through there. Hill Street is an identified route, safe routes to school route that was identified in a study recently completed by New Brighton. Students come over Capitol Avenue over the highway, go down Hill Street, and then go down Rosedale and can cut over to the school across Noble Gulch at that point. So it is an identified route for pedestrians and bicyclists. So just to confirm, this is the area we're talking, this is Capitol Avenue. Here's Hill Street, the block we're really focusing on right now, and Rosedale at the other end. So here's just some quick photos of kind of the issues here. You can see we have parking on both sides and 2 narrow traffic lanes. So it's pretty typical that cars will drive right down the middle of the street. Obviously, that can lead to conflicts when there's a car coming the other way. There are no sidewalks or bike lanes on here. So we literally have two lanes of parking and 2 lanes of traffic. And they're all narrow. They're all too narrow. We have a 7-foot parking, 9-foot lane, 9-foot lane, 7-foot parking. So you can see there's inadequate room for this to proceed without. So 2 cars come like this. One needs to stop, pull over into a driveway or something so they can get by the other. There's ongoing issues with mirrors getting knocked off cars getting sideswiped. So there is definitely not a wide enough roadway, and the right-of-way here is only 40 feet wide, so there is some expansion, but I want to show you, this is a typical road section where we have a 50-foot right-of-way, where we'd have 12-foot lanes and 8-foot parking and sidewalks on both sides, and that doesn't include a bike lane. So if we throw in 2 5-foot bike lanes on there, you're talking a 60-foot right-of-way. That's where you would design a road today, and we're at 40 feet, so we're 20 feet short. So Kimley Horn came up with 3 alternatives and an A and a B for each alternative. I'm going to kind of go through these quickly, but I just want to make sure you understand what they are. So alternative A took the parking off the south side and put it in a 5-foot bike lane here. So we have a 5-foot bike lane, a 10-foot travel lane, 10-foot travel lane, and then 7-foot parking. So what that will do is, it'll open up so cars coming here typically can cross this line pretty easily into the bike lane as long as there's not a bike or pedestrian there, which is probably most of the time, and make this passing a little easier. And these are 10-foot lanes. 10-foot lanes is what we have on 41st in some blocks. So 10-foot lanes are still narrow, but certainly work better than the 9-foot lanes here. This does not expand the roadway. We're still in the existing curb. So we have 5 feet of right-of-way that belongs or is dedicated for road purposes on the south side, but we only have 3 feet to the north side, and there's also telephone poles right along here. So as we move forward, option 1B is the exact same thing, but removing the parking on the north side and putting the bike lane on the north side. Otherwise, all the other dimensions are the same. Alternative 2A is very similar. It adds a bike lane, but it also adds a sidewalk. That has the distinct advantage of providing both a pedestrian and a bicycle pathway. Obviously, the cost of this sidewalk in that block's somewhere around $200,000 to $250,000. It would involve removing quite a bit of improvements, put in residents there, fences, ornamental trees, landscaping. The city would most likely, pay for the demolition of those, but they wouldn't reimburse the residents. It is within the road right away, so we do have the right to expand into there if we wanted to build the sidewalk. Option 2B keeps the sidewalk on this side because we really don't have the room on the north side to build a sidewalk easily, but it does flip-flop and put the bike lane on that side. And option 3A, just to include it, is kind of getting to a sidewalk on both sides. To do it within the existing right-of-way, we would have to relocate the curb and gutter on the north side and build some bulb outs around the power poles that are there. So we'd have parking on this side. We'd have no parking where we'd have to bulb out around power poles, and then a sidewalk on that side. This does not include any bike lanes, though. So it provides sidewalks on both sides, but no bike lanes. So that's trying to work within the existing right-of-way and what options we have. Obviously, going from 1 to 2 increases the cost, and 3 increases the cost. 3B just is the same thing, but we switch the parking on it. So this was included in the agenda report. Kind of gives a summary of the 3 options. Option 1 being striping only, 2 is striping and sidewalk on one side, and striping and sidewalk on 2 sides. And you can see the costs increase pretty dramatically as we go up through the options, which just means it's going to take us longer probably to plan for it as a city and identify the funding for it. So this is also in the agenda packet, and I realize it's a little hard to see, but I think I can get the genesis of it. Is that this is Hill Street here, and this is just identifying the existing parking numbers of the surrounding streets in here, and they're summarized over in this table here to give us an idea where the parking is in this neighborhood, the on-street parking, and if we remove it, where those impacts are going to be. So if we remove some of this parking here, we're going to see increased demands on these other streets. And just to give you an idea, on the south side, there's 9 parking spaces, and on the north side there are 18 spaces. So there are fewer spaces to the south on this. So on February 17th or 16th, we held a workshop. It was attended by 13 residents in the area. 6 of them lived along the north side, and 7 of them lived along the south side of the street. Just to give you an idea, we did notice all the properties that face Hill Street in that area for both this workshop and tonight's meeting. So we've sent out probably a couple hundred notices for each of these public meetings. There's almost unanimous agreement among those in attendance that something needs to be done. The road's not safe for pedestrians, bikes, or even vehicles to be on it. And they expressed concern that there isn't sufficient parking in the 2 apartment buildings. There's an apartment building at both ends of Hill Street in that block. Those apartments were built with the appropriate number of parking at the time they were built. I'm sure densities within those individual apartment buildings may have increased, and that brings more cars, but that's a common thing that occurs. It's really hard for us at this point to go back and require those apartment buildings to put in additional parking. So we did do some dot voting as we exited the meeting. We asked those in attendance to vote where which alternative they liked and whether they liked north side removal of parking or south side removal of parking. And the results were 7 voted for alternate 1, removing, all of them were unanimous to remove the parking on the south side. 5 liked alternative 2, which is the same thing, but it included a sidewalk. And then 1 did vote for alternative 3.
Steve, on alt 2, were those votes also for removing from the south side?
I'm sorry, for alt 2?
Was that?
I think it was more split. There was 1 or 2 that were from the north side, but sorry, I'm not sure what happened here. Not responding. See if it clears up here. If not.
Steve, did I hear you correctly? There are 9 spaces on the south side. How many spaces on the north? 18? Really? Is that because of driveways, curb cuts?
Most of that is parking in front of the apartment is parking.
Right. Got it. Yeah, in front of the parking, in front of the mobile home park, there's, thank you, Jamie.
Yep.
Understood. Okay.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Switch computers.
Yeah, mine died. So some other discussions that we had at the February 16th meeting were phasing the improvements. I think there was a general consensus, like I said, to start, get something going now. It needs to be going. And so start with alternate 1, but ending up at alternate 2 with the sidewalk in place as the city can fund it. The idea of making Hill Street a one-way street was discussed. That would certainly ease the vehicle-to-vehicle conflicts, but that has some secondary unintended consequences. If we did make that a one-way street, now we'd go from a narrow street to a wide street. You would see probably a 5-mile-per-hour increase in the speed of vehicles going down that street on average. I mean, so the faster cars are even going to go faster than now. And also, the cars that you're taking off that street are going to end up on another street, most likely Pine or Plum, whichever one's below it. And we're going to then be dealing with the same issues on Pine or Plum that we're dealing with here. So that was not something staff thinks we should look at. And if we need to look at that, it's going to take much more studies to identify the other impacts and ways to address them as we move forward. There was a request for permit parking, although it wasn't permit parking as we usually consider it, where it's for residents only and not for visitors. It was for residents to park in front of their own houses, or for residents only if you had a Hill Street address to use it, and not residents, and if you had a Cap Ave or a Rosedale address to park on it. And I don't think that was something that we would support. They are public streets, and all residents should be treated the same. We do obviously have a preference where we have preferential parking for residents, but it's not on a street-by-street basis. And there was also a discussion about a need for a sidewalk on Hill Street from Capitola Ave down toward Bay Avenue. And something that we need to put in the CIP probably and identify funding at a later time. But I think that that section of Hill Street actually has what we're proposing here, where we have a striped bike lane on one side, and people use that effectively now, but it would be better to have a sidewalk there too. So that would be an alternate 2 down to the end of the street. And then there's also speeding concerns raised on Capitola Avenue. I know the police department has a POP project on that right now and are working on it. We're looking at options, and we'll continue to work on that. So our recommendations, because it was, it was a 7-5 vote on moving forward, and we only had 13 of probably 45 residents, we're recommending that the council approve a 2-week trial program where we remove the parking on the south side of Hill Street between Capitola Ave and Rosedale. And during that 2 weeks, staff will monitor the parking on the surrounding streets and we'll do some before, and so then we can get some counts during it and see where the impacts are moving to. We will send notices out once we select a date. We have notices prepared to send to all the residents, telling them what we're after, what we're doing. And it includes a survey for them to send back to us once the trial is over, to give us an idea, give us feedback on the program. So I've selected 2 dates. Certainly other dates are available. I tried to pick a Monday through the following Friday, so it would encapsulate one weekend. June 19th to June 30th. That's about the earliest I think we could get the noticing out and get all the barricades and everything ready. And the other one would be July 10th to July 21st.
Steve, is it possible, should we decide to do this, and this by extension to the chief, that we can do a speed monitoring during this 2-week period so we can see how the speeds increase? Because I know that once you give cars more room not to slow down and pass each other, they tend to move pretty quickly.
So we could. I would recommend that we do it with bubble counts and not the radar sign, because the radar sign actually slows people down in and of itself. So I would just, I'd probably add another $1,500 to do a before and after, and that's something we could certainly do.
Great.
That is the end of my presentation.
Thank you. Any questions before we open it up to the public? Then,
Can I ask a question? So, have there been any incidents or safety concerns or complaints about the lack of a sidewalk? The reason I ask is that, as you well know, $200,000 is an awful lot of money, and if there wasn't any incidents or complaints, I would wonder.
No, absolutely. There's complaints because people are forced to walk out in the roadway right now, and you're walking out into a narrow roadway. So yes, there was lots of concerns about the lack of pedestrian facilities on that street. I don't know if there's a history of reported accidents that have occurred. There's certainly a lot of reported accidents of conflicts between vehicles that have rubbed up against each other. But as I'm sure we'll hear tonight, there are genuine concerns about pedestrians walking down the middle of that road.
So I've heard that this is a pathway for a lot of students going to New Brighton. And so I went up there and ascertained that, in fact, yes, there's a lot of New Brighton students going back and forth using that road. So that's probably one of the major issues. You know, it's a pathway for kids besides regular residents. And some comments I received was that, when it gets dark early, you're still walking on the street. And so my wife and I went up there one time. We do a run up at Blue Boar Park, and so we chose that route. And sure enough, you're walking on the street, and as a car comes by, and they may not be going too slow to see you, that kind of thing.
So my concern was from a budgetary standpoint, and, if we just went through all this, and $200,000 is a lot of money, and if it really is a safety concern, we should find, I think, a way to pay for that and not something else.
okay, come on up, line up, and come up and give us your thoughts about this. Come up to the podium and sign in and tell us what you'd like to see there. It's your neighborhood. Don't be shy. Come on up. You can come up more than one at a time if you like. Good evening.
Hi there. So I live on Hill Street. Can you hear me?
No, use the microphone. Thank you.
Okay. I live on Hill Street on the corner, Hill and Rosedale. And my question is,
You have to get to the microphone, please.
have there been any fatalities? Have there been any accidents? I mean, what's going on there? I walk up and down that street, and I ride my bike, and I drive my car. And when I drive my car, I'm extremely careful, because I used to live on a one-lane dirt road, and we were always really careful because we knew we were in an area where we could have accidents. So what are the stats from the fire department?
I don't think have been any fatalities there, but people are concerned about it. So
Well, I'm concerned about it, but I'm also concerned about the fact that when I have guests, there's no place to park.
Welcome to Capitola.
So given the choice, I would rather be careful driving my car and riding my bike and walking and having a place to park when I get home. And my other question is, why wasn't the safe route to school on Pine or Plum?
I don't know. We'd have to probably ask the traffic engineer.
So we could move the safe route to school to Pine or Plum, if they have more room. You don't have to come down Hill Street just because somebody said that's the safe route, because it's not a safe route. So go a different way. That's my second one. And the other concern is when you talk about cars speeding up, why don't we use speed bumps? Works everywhere else. I know the fire department doesn't like them, but use a speed bump. So those are 3 issues.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. I also live on Hill Street. With all due respect, welcome to Capitola. Does not make me feel very good.
I know. I'm sorry. I wasn't.
I
wasn't trying to be impolite. I'm just,
Well-
it's everywhere. It's a problem in every neighborhood. I'm sorry.
I understand,
I'll
but
grapple with
it was a comment that I don't think should have been said, with all due respect. I park on Hill Street. A lot of times I can't park on Hill Street. If you take parking spaces away, you're going to impact us tremendously. Recently, I had to park far down Rosedale, and my car got ripped off. I got broken into and ripped off. It wasn't enough to report, but, when I woke up the next morning, someone had, gone through it and taken, fortunately, there was nothing of value in it, but you're going to put us farther and farther away if you take parking spaces away, and I think we're going to have more incidents. So I think if you take parking away, we're going to have more issues than we have right now. I walk Hill Street. I drive Hill Street. I haven't seen any incidents. People are very polite driving up and down it. I see people stop and let other cars go by. So sometimes the best choice is no choice. And in my opinion, this is the best choice for Hill Street.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak before we let you speak again? Good evening.
Hi. I also live on Hill Street, and just yesterday as I was walking down the street, there was another woman there who had to pull in between cars to let a car pass. She was walking, and the car had to pass, and she says, wow, this is a dangerous street. And it is. There's lots of people. They say, well, don't make it a path to school. But I can tell you what, when the parents drop off kids at New Brighton, they don't go on Plum or Pine. They come on Hill Street. And there's a lot of traffic that makes that a corridor between one area of the city and the other. And I think we need to make a safer street.
Thank you very much. Who else would like to speak? Okay, go ahead. Thanks.
I just want to mention that since the last meeting, there's a bus stop that has been not in use for 6 months. We've gotten ticketed every day. There are 3 spots there, and for some reason, the parking services are coming up and ticketing us in a dead bus zone. There are also other places. There are no little, white lines on Hill Street, so where you could put 2 cars, 1 car parks in the middle. So the parking there is very efficient. And I'm retiring from my job soon. I'm going to come talk to you. We're going to get the parking efficient because right now it's just really scattered. I'm not sure why they're ticketing in a dead bus zone. Maybe you can look into that. Thanks.
Thank you very much. And would anyone else like to speak?
If you live on Hill Street, we'd really love to hear from you. So don't be bashful. Come up and give us your opinion.
This is your chance to tell us your experiences so that we have an idea of what it's like. I don't live on Hill Street. This is why we have the public meetings.
You talked him into it, Josh. Nice work.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
I wasn't planning on speaking. I live on the corner of Hill Street and Capitola, and our driveway is very, it's that complex that has 4 homes and 5 actually. And for us to come out of that driveway, if there's cars parked, 2 or 3 of them going to the corner of Capitola, and you're trying to come out of that driveway, you can't see. And this has happened repeatedly. And so there's a concern, even if we could have that short area, maybe with red paint or whatever, just so we could get out safely. So that was a concern of mine, and you truly, as you come out of that driveway, and there's probably others along the street too where there's multiple homes, the visibility is not great. So you really creep out and hope you can get out in time without being hit, to be honest.
As well as that, people do come along pretty quickly, and we have traffic coming at us in, these directions, and also from Capitola and turning. It's dangerous. And I walk a lot, and I never walk up Hill Street because it's, you have to really be watching behind you for cars coming up. So it's a dangerous area. I don't know about the fatality rates. Nobody's been killed, but, people have been scared, I betcha.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll look into that red, painting it red, that red for visibility. Yeah, thank you very much. Anyone else like to speak? Then I'll bring it back to the council.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to hear about the bus stop that's not a functional bus stop,
yeah,
ticketing.
I believe I spoke with her on the phone just last week. We are contacting the RTC, or the RTC Metro, to determine if that bus stop is not in use now, and if it's not planned to be put in use, we will remove it and extend add about 3 more parking spaces on. So that's on Rosedale.
Good.
So we're it's posted for no parking right now. So
It's posted no parking, and it is posted no parking.
it is
Okay.
There's a sign that says no parking from here to corner.
Yeah. So I think one resident mentioned maybe white lines. I think you call those challenge lines to define the parking spaces a little bit better so that, people will not take up too much space when they park the car, so it's more efficient.
Those go both ways, to be honest with you. Those define, we usually put in, 18 to 20-foot parking stalls.
Oh, could be too big, you mean?
And so, yeah, what comes is people tend to be able to squeeze more cars in. If we put in parking stalls, we'll probably end up eliminating them. But there are people then, when there's no parking stalls, that will park in such a way that they don't leave enough space behind them. So it can go both ways. Certainly, it's something we could do. We do it in other places all the time to help define it. Usually, we do it where there's parking problems with driveways. We really haven't run into that problem.
Right.
We do have a lot of red curb. We've been, the lady wants red curb so she can get out. We do that regularly on Hill Street, and there's quite a few where we've already done that on both sides of the driveway.
We won't be striping for this 2-week period, correct? We're just going to be eliminating parking.
Barricading it, yes. Okay.
Okay.
So, if I may, Councilman Tamini, you had asked about the parking, and I misread it before. So, in this block, there are 18 parking spots on the south and 20 on the north. I apologize for the confusion.
That makes more sense. Okay.
Peter.
Yeah, I was just wondering if the committee did consider speed bumps or traffic calming measures as part of the study.
So, traffic calming is when you slow down vehicles. I mean, I don't think speed is really an issue there. I mean, the speed issue there, the speed limit is 25. That is the lowest speed limit we can post. And narrow roads are the way you slow down cars. We have a narrow road. I mean, I'm sure there's an occasional car that speeds down that road. But when you start looking at average speeds, it's going to be less than the 25 miles an hour that's there. As far as speed bumps, right now the city doesn't have a policy for the installation of speed bumps on any of the streets, and we've not installed any. We have some on 45th, 47th, and 49th, and those were installed back in the 90s. We haven't installed any since then, and we've kind of maintained that policy of not installing them. Speed bumps in and amongst themselves, they slow down vehicles right at the speed bump. But if you look at their speeds, about 4 car lengths from the speed bump, it's going to be the same whether there was a speed bump there or not. So they're not.
Didn't we do something on Topaz or something recently? The community came in and said that we need to calm traffic or put in.
That's another traffic calming project I'll be bringing to the council in July. And yeah.
So you don't have a solution for the community? It doesn't have an agreed upon solution for that with speed bumps or some other.
Like I said, right now there's not a policy for the city to install speed bumps.
We've taken it up before, and we're not enthusiastic about them. And there is such a thing as speed lumps that we might want to talk about sometime in the future that are real little ones, but they kind of get the message across, give the message to slow down a little bit.
I know potholes work too.
Yeah.
We're very active with that program. Thank you.
Yes.
So just, this is the 2-week trial program, and I'm assuming that once that's over, it's going to come back to us. It won't just automatically become permanent.
No, we will take it down after 2 weeks. We will hopefully get some survey feedback that we send out. I'm sure we'll get lots of comments and emails while we're in the middle of it, and we will bring it back to council for some final direction.
Great. So I understand the concerns for both safety and parking. On my street, we have a similar situation. No bike lanes, no sidewalks, parking on both sides of the street. And quite often, as I turn the corner onto my street, I have to stop and make sure there aren't children or people walking their dogs or another car coming. And we quite often have to pull over and wait for another car to pass. So I can understand the concerns from both sides. I will say to keep in mind that this is a 2-week trial, which means that once it's over, you can come back and let us know how it worked for you or didn't work for you. But that just right now, we're not saying this is permanent. And so I think that it would be important to keep an open mind in allowing this 2-week trial to go forward and seeing how it will improve potentially the safety of those in the neighborhood. And with that in mind, I would make a motion that we approve the 2-week trial program.
I will second that with some comments. I'm concerned about it promoting speeding because I know that having too narrow a road does slow down traffic. And we may wind up with traffic. You know, speeding is not necessarily the issue now, but it may become the issue with the wider spaces. I'm more comfortable, should it get to this point, with parking adjacent to sidewalks, and that is 2B, but that's for another time to discuss. I'm very interested in Capitola Bay sidewalks. That is easily as dangerous, if not more, than this stretch. And whether it's a designated safe route to school or not, it's still a route to school. And it's still used, and any street that doesn't have a bike lane, you know, makes me a little anxious because I drive around this town all the time. And there is a concern. And there doesn't necessarily have to be a fatality for us to be, you know, have some heightened concern about this. So I'm in favor of Kristen's motion.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to the motion, or maybe bring back some discussion after the motion is either passed or not passed. My issue is community participation and having the ability to discuss the experience. So I went to the workshop that Steve organized through Kimberly Horn, right? And a lot of people came there. There was a lot of discussion about what people felt about their concerns influencing whatever decision we would make, you know, in the proposals. So after the 2-week trial period, I would like to propose that we have another workshop where people come from the neighborhood, and now they've had experience with losing parking spaces or having the ability to go down the street in a safer environment, and see how that plays out in terms of what their other neighbors felt about it too. Because in reality, we're trying to figure out a solution that's safe and that deals with the issues of the neighbors in that area. So now that they've had a chance to see how a proposed solution works, are they satisfied with it? Is this something that meets their needs? And yes, we'll get back to survey. That could be part of it. So a presentation could be made of the survey so the neighbors who can't come, the results will be there and others could see what those results are. So I'd either like to amend the motion or have it come back and make another motion to have a public meeting as we did in the community room and give the neighbors a chance to talk about what their experiences were. And I think a lot of city council members came to that. It would give us a chance to hear what they say and their experiences so that we have a better understanding of, you know, what we can or cannot do.
Will the maker of the motion accept a friendly amendment?
Yes.
And second?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's included in the motion. Any other
Thank you.
comments? Discussion?
No, I'm all about having public participation, so thank you for accepting that amendment.
Ed, comments?
Yeah, I agree with the motion made and also the comments of Councilman Termini. I'm worried about getting a good evaluation period, and so I was going to suggest a friendly amendment also. I'm concerned about extending the evaluation period from 2 weeks to 30 days. Because I really want people to feel like they've been impacted. Okay, it could be casual in 2 weeks. 2 weeks comes and goes. You know, I just have a feeling like if we're going to take this away, we're going to take away parking forever there. Although I realize my first concern is the safety of the road. I think we all agree with that. But anytime we make a decision about parking, I can remember us talking about possibly moving the parking on one side of Monterey, and that got pretty contentious. So I'm afraid that a 2-week period, people are gone for the summer. They may not be able to evaluate it. I would just as soon extend it to 30 days, or I'd be open to your input on that, Public Works, about that. But I want these people to realize that this you may have trouble finding parking, or it may improve the walkability, or all those things. But for 30 days, I think it's a reasonable impact period.
So, Councilman Botdorf, I think I have two issues, not necessarily good or bad, with that. An extended one, obviously, would give us more opportunity to test it out. If there's a problem, we're prolonging that problem. We've had other trials where we came back and took them out right away. But I think my key thing is we want an end date. So if it's 30 days, that's fine. And as long as we have an end date, so that if there are problems, we can tell people it's going to end on a certain day, or it's not a staff decision to extend it at any point. So that would be my feedback on that. Just a couple of things. So does the motion include doing speed surveys before and after, or before and during the trial? Because if it does, I'm going to ask that we do it in July, because I need, June 19th, I can't guarantee I can get the before speed trials out there, because we need to contract with it and their availability to get it. Probably get it within 2 to 3 weeks, so I'd ask that we do it in July.
Steve, I would say to start it the day after the 4th of July weekend and run it for 30 days, if that's okay with the motion maker.
It makes sense to me, and I think that, yes, I think speed surveys are important, because we need to, it's not just taking away parking. If we're changing the entire tone of that street for the people who live on it, cars going 25 is one thing, cars going 15 to maneuver around each other, completely different, feeling in the neighborhood.
So, yes, on the speed surveys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And she's okay with the motion?
Yes, 30 days. Yeah, I think that's a great idea, because people are gone during the summertime, and they, if they're only inconvenienced a couple of days, that's going to be completely different than the rest of their life.
Right.
So that is good fit.
We want what's best for your neighborhood, truly, on this one. So I just want you to all recognize how it impacts you, and then when you have this meeting or fill out the survey, we can make a good decision.
So if I can recommend dates, that we would start at July, I'm picking the 7th, which is the Friday after the 4th of July, through July 31st. That's not quite 30 days, but it's a full 3 weeks.
Works for me.
Would that be sufficient?
Yeah.
Or we can continue to August 4th if you'd prefer.
I would prefer to try to get it closed. Do you want to go? Let's go to August 4th.
Okay. So that'll be July 7th to August 4th.
Okay.
When does school start?
School would start in the middle of August.
Wharf to Wharf is July 23rd.
Yeah.
But
They don't fill out the survey because they don't
I really think this is going to be about how losing the parking impacts you. I think that's what this is going to boil down to. You're going to either find that it's really difficult to find a parking place, or you're going to figure it out. And we're going to try to get the Rosedale opened up, and maybe there's some other spots on Capitola that can be freed. But I think the parking is what you're going to recognize impacts your neighborhood. I think you would all say, I can tell with the visibility, and if that side was empty, and I believe there's some kind of a feeling that down the road we'd love to see sidewalks there. That makes total sense. Obviously, it's a budgetary item, but having that side clear is probably going to make that a more user-friendly street.
when this first came up, I thought we were doing sidewalks on the lower part of Bay, because I do see a lot of people walking up and down there.
The lower part of Hill.
Lower part of Hill.
That was one of the.
I do see a fair number of people walking up and down that hill with no sidewalks.
There was a proposal 2 years ago by Councilmember Norton and.
Well, there was on that.
But with Measure D, we might be able to start
Right.
looking at those projects seriously.
Because
so.
there was the residents of that area, they think they've moved since then, but they came to us and they live in that middle section, and they said, could you please think about putting in a sidewalk here for us and a bike lane maybe? So, good. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Council.
Comment?
Just one last comment. So with the program that we're proposing and with the trial period, Part of the success actually rests with the neighbors. And we're going to do a meeting, and that successful meeting, that meeting is going to be very important. And I think a lot of us will be there. We can't participate because as a group we can't participate in the discussion, but we can listen, and we can hear what your comments are, so we better understand what's going on. But the success of that really depends on neighbors telling neighbors to show up at that meeting and plan it in their schedule so that that input could be there and that exchange could be there. Thank you.
Item B, free tree removal, tree program proposal, not removal, giveaway.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. By way of background, as you're aware, the city has a community tree and forest management ordinance, commonly just referred to as the city's tree ordinance, which requires homeowners to obtain a permit to remove or significantly modify most trees. As part of the permit requirement, we do require replacement trees be planted, typically at a 2-to-1 ratio on site. We do have cases sometimes where that's not feasible, though, a small lot, maybe there's a tree that's obstructing the utility that just has to be removed. And in those cases, we do allow payment of in lieu fees rather than replanting. Over the years, we've collected a fair amount of in lieu fees, which are deposited into a dedicated tree fund, which the city uses periodically to purchase and plant trees throughout the city for various tree planting projects. The tree fund currently has over $67,000 in it, and this includes a recent $48,000 payment from PG&E that was a result of their Community Safety Initiative project. As you may recall, they removed dozens of trees throughout the city that were interfering with their high-pressure underground natural gas line. So once we got that check, we really started scratching our heads and thinking, what can we do to spend these monies? We don't want to just continue to grow this pot of money. It's intended to grow trees. So we talked internally. We really didn't have any significant tree planting projects in mind in the foreseeable future. So what we came up with was a free tree program where we'd offer property owners up to 2 free trees. The city would foot the bill for those, no cost to property owners. And the program would promote the city's tree canopy goals that are in the tree ordinance, as well as our climate action plan goals. We were targeting allocating $15,000 to a program like this, which would fund approximately 200 to 400 trees, depending on the size of the tree and the species type. We did uncover an interesting program that the Arbor Day Foundation offers. It's called their Energy Savings Tree Program. It's largely a turnkey program, which allows residents to log on online, place an order for their trees, and then they're delivered to them, and they plant them in the ground. The program is pretty cool because it requires very little investment of staff time. The trees are reasonably priced, $30 to $50 typically, depending again on size and species. Arbor Day does provide free marketing materials for the city's use, things like flyers and brochures. All the trees would be locally sourced and grown. They would work with nurseries somewhere in the greater Bay Area to propagate the seeds and to grow the trees here. They do offer a couple of different delivery options. One is a direct mail where somebody could go online, order a tree, and a box arrives at their door sometime later with a 1-gallon tree, and then they go out and plant it. They also offer a community tree event if we wanted to order in bulk. Have an event on a Saturday or something, have several dozen trees available, and then people who order them would come down and pick up their trees. And I think I mentioned the property owners, their only responsibility would be for ordering the trees and planting them. One other thing that this program does provide is a customized website for Capitola. It provides an automated ordering and reservation system for residents that are interested in participating. It also has resources to assist residents to select the optimal tree species and planting location to maximize shade and energy savings. And then it also provides comprehensive reports to the end user, which would be us, showing the number of trees planted through the program and the resultant energy, water, and carbon savings achieved. And they also offer a customer service hotline, so if anybody has any problems, they call up the Arbor Day Foundation rather than City Hall, which is something we all like. So just to go to give you a little idea of how this website works, it's basically a 4-step process. A person would go into the website, we'd publicize the address, they type in their address and their city and zip code. That'll bring up a GIS layer that shows a map, and the interface will ask them to outline where their house is. And then a menu pops up with the various trees that are available for order. In this particular example, they had 6 different species. You'd select your tree. And then on the next screen, it allows you to pick a spot in your home where you might want to plant the tree. And it'll show you the optimal location where you could expect to achieve the highest energy savings for planting the tree. It also would identify any obstructions with homes, property lines, or overhead utilities. And then finally, just a simple checkout process, putting in your name, your address, the trees you ordered, and then on the left-hand side there you see that identifies their order. And then a confirmation screen just showing them the trees that they ordered, how much water that they would be expected to save, and the energy savings and air pollution benefits from the trees that they've chosen to plant. And this is a screenshot of some of the information that's provided to the end user, again, the city, which would show us basically, if 100 trees are planted, how much water, energy, and carbon savings that would have provided to the city. And so that's the program that we're recommended to you this evening. We do ask that you authorize staff to allocate up to $15,000 from the city's tree fund to provide this free tree to city residents. I would note that we'd probably start off slow, and this could be a multi-year project depending on the success and how popular it is, and we could repeat going forward. Typically, the trees are available for November and February shipping periods, so we'd have to time it, and there'd be kind of 2 times a year. But it could be an ongoing thing if it works well. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
You left me a little bit confused there, the $15,000 versus the Arbor Society's free tree program, which seems to be turnkey and no cost to the city?
There is a cost to the city. There's no cost to the residents. So we're buying the trees.
Got it.
And we'd be using the monies from our tree fund that's been accruing money for a long time, and we don't use it very much.
And they will administer the program and...
Correct.
Good.
Got it.
Thank you very much.
Jack.
So we would have an account with them, and they would deduct from that account?
That's right. We'd open up an account. We pay for the trees. We do have to place an order up front for them to grow, and that would be a little bit tricky. So I think how I'd handle it is start off with something modest, maybe 100 trees, and see how popular it is, how successful, and then maybe build up if it works well. And if it doesn't, maybe we scale it back in the future.
And these are trees that are good for this area?
Yeah, they're all the Arbor Day works with you. They select appropriate species. I'd also talk to our city arborists, make sure that we're picking species that work well in this area and that they agree with it.
And we should also give them a handout that says, don't plant over your sewer lateral or your water lateral lines. Know where your utility
high-pressure
lines
gas
are.
transmission lines.
Know where your utilities are. Don't plant over that. You'll have problems in the future if you do.
That's a good tip.
Yeah, we can work on that. Comments from the public? Anyone? Please come up. No, because people... Thousands watch at home.
Nobody gets away.
They can't hear you. They can't hear you.
Nobody gets away that easy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Don't get shy.
You can make up a name, though. You don't have to give us your own name.
I just had 2 questions. One is how is this a single family dwelling program, or how do you handle multi residences?
It could be any property owner. Renters, theoretically, we'd allow them to get trees, but they need their landlord's consent.
Well, I was talking more about condominium.
Sure, yeah. I think any property in the city, if somebody wants to plant trees, we would allow them to participate.
So that would be 2 trees for the complex. You're not talking about 2 trees for every single unit.
I think in a situation like that, we'd want to work with the person that's interested. I think we would allow them to get more trees given the size of the property. I don't know if 2 per unit would make sense, but we'd be flexible. The idea is to provide residents an opportunity to get some trees and improve the city's tree canopy and reduce our energy consumption.
Right. We had to have a couple of trees cut down because they were in danger of falling, and there was a reluctance among the HOA about replacing them with the drought and with water shortage. So how does that come into play with this program?
Well, a lot of it depends on the species of tree you use. If it's a native tree, they don't consume a lot of water. If you do use some of the more exotic, non-native species, they might be more water dependent, particularly fruit trees, palm trees, and so we'd really try to stick to something that's native to this area and uses a low amount of water.
So it would be just the amount that gets it growing and rooted?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Would anyone else like to speak? Yes, Peter.
So it sounds to me like we've got a lot of money that we're trying to find creative ways to spend it, and this is a pretty creative way. Can I suggest if the following creative way is within the charter, and that is Soquel Creek has got a lot of trees along it that are being harmed by ivy, English ivy, Cape ivy. Would it be within the charter of this budget to maintain those trees by hiring crews to clear out the English ivy and areas around it in order to protect those trees?
I'd have to look at that a little more closely, but I don't think so. I think the ordinance is relatively specific that it's for the purpose of planting trees and increasing the community's canopy coverage. But I like the idea, and if there was a way to do it, or the council is interested in amending the ordinance, I think we could certainly entertain that.
Thank you. Jacques?
Yeah, Peter, I like your suggestion. If vegetation like ivy, ivy grows up trees, it does kill the trees, so it's obvious that, we're going to lose a tree. So I think your idea is a good one. Maybe we can entertain the idea of looking at the ordinance and maybe coming up with a recommendation and having sort of a dual program here. Because, along the Soquel Creek and other places in the city, a lot of trees are being, potentially killed by the ivy and the other habitat, non-native habitational residents, I guess.
Other comments? Kristen?
Yeah, I like that idea, Peter, of with the trees along Soquel Creek that need to be, looked after because they're being damaged by the ivy. I'm wondering, are you proposing that we include that in the free tree program, or that we use what's left over in our tree budget for that program?
Well, I was just suggesting that if there's $60,000, I would prefer it go towards something like that rather than the free tree program. There may be room for both. I don't know.
I'd have a hard time going along with not doing the free tree program in order to clear the ivy, but I think there's more than enough money in there, and I think we need to bring the ordinance back so we can free up that money so that Peter doesn't have to go out there with his crew and clean the ivy. Thank you for what you've done so far. You've done a great job.
No, I think we should bring that ordinance back. At the time, we didn't know that we'd have this kind of monies available, and the trees are already there, and they're quite tall and well-established. Plus, they're in riparian corridors, which we'd like to protect.
I'll move the staff recommendation.
With the amendment to bringing it back for an amendment?
Well, it's not really part of the motion, just we're requesting that you bring back the ordinance so we can possibly use some of the money. But it doesn't have to be part of this ordinance. I think we need to keep this specific to the tree program with council direction to bring back that ordinance.
I second that, and I think we probably should give the item, the program at least 1 year to work before we start, seeing what our needs are. If it turns out that there's a high demand, then we have to come back and look at that. I don't know how much our continuous supply into that fund is. But if it turns out that it's something that's not taken advantage of, obviously diverting it to another area, which we know there's a demand, would be a great idea.
We have another $45,000 to fool around with, so there's that too. You can buy a lot of goats for $45,000 to go through there.
Discussion?
Madam Mayor, members of the council, I hate to interject now because it sounds like you're just about to reach a consensus, but I think that rather than direct us to review the ordinance and bring it back, let's review the ordinance and we'll take a look and make a determination about whether or not those funds could be eligible to maintain some trees on public property, and if so, skip step of amending the ordinance and simply outline options to do so.
That's just directions, but the motion is just to follow staff direction on free trees.
There's probably that kind of money in the budget we can find. So I'd say let's look around for that kind of money. If that's something we want to do, then we should find the money for that.
Well, I don't want to get into where we start spending money in the budget because we've already had a little contentious conversation on that. I tried to access a tree fund that's existing here, and I think that was Peter's intent, was staying within the boundaries of that fund.
It is, but if we want to clean up those trees along the corridor, then we should look around for a little money to do that. And there may be some, and there's certainly some in the budget.
Well, there's a lot of items in the budget. There's $1.5 million for the library that still has to be paid, so that's a different topic.
Let's not go down that road. This is a tree thing, and I'd like to call the question, please.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. C, the proposed budget, and the discussion of the wharf repairs.
Here we go. No.
Madam Mayor, members of the council, thank you for reminding everyone that we did add an item to this, which will be consideration of a contract for the wharf repairs, and we'll get to that later on in the presentation. I'm going to go quickly over these overview slides because this is the third of our budget hearings for the fiscal 17-18 budget. As I pointed out in the past, the local economy remains strong with major revenue sources continuing to grow. This is a status quo budget overall with no new positions added within the city. New revenue sources are coming online this fiscal year, including Measure F, local allocation of Measure D, as well as the Measure S library bonds. I also am happy to report that the first sale of library bonds took place last week and was successful with the rate coming in under the anticipated amount. So that's real good news. As I pointed out many times in the past, the ongoing threat in the long term to the city is primarily that I see due to the increasing PERS costs. Those costs are going to be significant and rise over the next 6 or 7 years and really cause, force us to make some important decisions. In addition, we have a heavy reliance on sales tax in the city. Sales tax is one of the most volatile sources of revenue a city can rely on. It tends to move around much more so than other revenue streams that the city depends on. At a high level, some of the major projects that are included in this budget this year included a $1 million transfer to help fund the new Capitola Branch Library. With this allocation and all the 100% guaranteed funds, we have a $1.55 million gap for our library, and that will be something the Finance Advisory Committee, the Friends of the Capitola Branch Library, and myself will be working on actively in the coming months. We have a COLA for all employees, as well as an increase in the PERS costs that employees are picking up that was pursuant to the adopted MOUs with all employee groups. Other highlights in this budget include the final year of our pension obligation bond payment, the expiration of Measure D and the phase-in of Measure F, some changes to the junior guard program that were directed last fiscal year, and as I said before, the local funds from the RTC's Measure D to help us fund our local roads. Now, the beginning of this meeting, we've distributed a revised budget, and it includes the following changes. Number one is it includes the expenditures the council directed at our last budget hearing using the projected fund balance in our general fund. We've revised the facilities reserve expenditures, taking out the City Hall frontage project and adding the $25,000 City Hall office improvement project. We've mentioned this previously, but we revised personnel expenditures, decreasing them by $30,000 due to an incorrect calculation. We also revised the equipment replacement fund revenues. They were decreased by $35,000, again, due to an incorrect budget entry number. The BIA figure, we got a final budget from the BIA, so that number was updated. The amounts, in terms of the principal amounts and the outstanding multi-year obligations, were updated as well. And due to the gas tax fund, again, we mentioned this at the last hearing, we didn't include a gas tax fund transfer that the council had previously authorized last fiscal year, which decreased our beginning fiscal year fund balance amount. And then overall, throughout the documents, there were other number of minor changes just for internal consistency to make sure the numbers matched in multiple places in the budget. So this is the high-level expenditure summary. These are the changes. We pointed this out before. This number decreased by about $30,000 due to the error we caught. We also revised the fund balance at the beginning of the year to reflect the gas tax transfer, and then you'll see the other financing uses numbers. That number increased in this fiscal year due to the appropriations that the council made or directed at the last hearing. Specifically circling back to those, council recommended allocating $25,000 to fix the basketball courts at the Jade Street Park. That was in conjunction with fixing the parking lot there for the community center. It included $40,000 for senior exercise equipment, $500,000 into the PERS trust fund to help offset the cost of future PERS increases, $220,000, as I mentioned, into the library, which brings the contribution to an even $1 million, $100,000 into the streets fund, which would expand the slurry seal program for next year, and then $300,000 for an employee down payment assistance program. You'll see a star next to that simply because we didn't allocate those funds. We left them in fund balance at this time, earmarked for the program, and when we do bring forward an actual program for council consideration, at that point we would consider establishing an account or a fund, or based on whatever our finance director recommends, the most appropriate way to designate those funds. But at this point, they are still sitting in fund balance, earmarked for the program. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, the facilities fund, we decreased, we initially had $110,000 for a city hall frontage improvement project, and that was revised down to a $25,000 office improvement project. There's a number of important non-recurring projects that are outlined in this budget. We've mentioned them several times in the past, but they include specifically the library, multiple equipment purchases, including a new loader for our beach, new public works truck, replacing all the face plates that have been aging and weathering in our community for our parking pay stations, hopefully standardizing the experience for visitors to reduce confusion, and a new police communications tower, which is currently located in the library, and we've proposed to move it over to the community center because the library will be torn down when the new building is built. We also have the funds for the local transfer from Measure D, as I mentioned before, with the proposed now $200,000 to augment that, which brings us to $485,000 into our road fund, with $65,000 allocated to expand the green bike paint program and $420,000 available for a slurry seal program. In the facilities reserve, as I mentioned before, there's the city hall improvements and then the community center parking lot for an even $100,000. And then lastly, as I've mentioned previously, we do intend to submit a grant application this fall for a $1.3 million Claire's Complete Street Reconstruction, Traffic Calming, Pedestrian Improvement Project. And staff is relatively confident that we should be competitive in that grant process. This will bring us to the item that we added, which involves the Wharf Fund and Measure F. The Public Works Director has previously briefed council on the issues associated with the floating dock, and I'll leave it to him to outline the proposed fix.
So as I previously reported to the council, in April, right before we were scheduled to put the floating docks in, one of the steel piles that holds the floating docks in place broke, requiring its removal. That prevented us from putting the floating docks in. There's 7 piles. One was missing beforehand. We knew that, but we thought with 6 others we were fine. Losing one more just tipped it too far, and we weren't able to put the floating docks in. So we've been looking at both some quick fixes we could do. Didn't really come up with any. And we were also, at the same time, getting a proposal to permanently install some replacements. So Power Engineering, who's done our last 3 or 4 pile replacement projects when we bid it, contacted them. Originally, they said they wouldn't be able to respond until this fall. They got back to me in about third week in May, thought they would have a crew available and a piece of equipment available, so they prepared a proposal for us for $126,000 to put in 2 steel piles and 1 wooden pile that they need to replace that goes on the trestle on the way out that's been missing. It's fine for the loadings we have, but to bring in a pile driver, they would need to replace that. So they have a wooden pile in place. There's another wooden pile that's missing out beyond the restaurant, but they do not have that in stock, and that would be a 2-month delay in getting that material. And we're kind of urgent to get this done so we can get the marina open. So that will not be included in the project at this time. looking at the funding, there's approximately a $78,500 fund balance that's available in the war fund at this point. That's at the end of this fiscal year, looking at next fiscal year. Typically, we've kept that balance as big as we could to pay for these reoccurring pile replacement projects, so this is an appropriate use of that. And to make up the balance of the funding, we're recommending using the Measure F funding in the amount of $47,800. So looking at the Measure F funding here, this is what we had proposed when we did it, but we're recommending that we take $20,000 from the Grand Avenue Path. That was originally a $40,000 allocation. And that is really just a placeholder at this point to, as the committee that's going to work on that figures out what the best path to move forward is, if they need any funding for reports or not. We think $20,000 is enough seed money at this point. And the rest of it, we're recommending from the preliminary design work for the wharf expansion project that we want to do. I think the allocation of taking $27,000 from that isn't going to slow down that project either. So we're recommending that we allocate $47,800 within the war fund, and we award a contract to begin. It's probably about 2 weeks out once I give them the word to replace the steel piles out there.
Could you go back a couple of slides, please, Steve? Stop. $126,000 to repair the 2 steel pilings, right?
Yes.
And the missing wooden pile.
Right.
But you're saying we're not going to do the wooden pile. Is it still 126?
No. So there's 2 wooden piles that are missing. We're doing the one that's on the trestle that they need to replace in order to walk their sledgehammer.
Right.
Wrong word.
The pile driver.
Thank you.
Pile driver.
Yeah. But we're not going to replace the one that's beyond the restaurant because that is a 2-month lead time. So we're replacing 2 steels and 1 wood for $126,000.
So they have 1 wood in stock.
They actually have one, but they're
2.
not long enough, unfortunately. They have 60-foot piles, and we need a 100-foot pile for out there.
How deep is the water?
The water varies. About 20, 30 feet, and then there's an additional mud layer that we have to drive through.
Thank you. I understand now.
Thank you.
Good.
Any other questions about that?
Just one question. So after the redesign of the wharf, these steel piles are going to be consistent with that design? I mean,
yes. Yeah. The expansion and work we're talking about is all on the west side of the pier, and these are on the east side of the pier. So
got it. Okay.
I will mention that we will be inspecting, because they need to put a diver in the water to drive these steel piles to make sure they're in the right location. They will be inspecting the other 5. We're having bring out 2 more if we deem it necessary to replace those, or if they find something wrong. We'll probably take care of that at the same
Each
time.
price goes down dramatically once the pile driver's out there.
Exactly.
Will you have them take pictures if you can take pictures, and also look for any big pieces of debris or anything like that we should take out if there's any?
Yeah, we're going to have them
chairs.
swim out to the end of the pier and look at the steel piles out there. So I'll add a note to add if they. I don't think any pictures will turn out. There's not much visibility down there.
Right.
But I can ask them if they see any garbage. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So extracting the broken steel piles.
Yeah, they take they find it, and they take a high pressure hose, air hose, and jet it out until they can get the old pile out. They've done it before. We've done this the last time we did a replacement project there.
Okay. And the other pile is near the bathroom, right? The one we can't replace.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it.
Do we close the wharf while they're working on it?
Yes, we will be closing the wharf for about a week when we do this. I've talked briefly with 2 tenants out there. Obviously, Frank is overjoyed that we're moving forward with this, and Willie is understanding.
Not so happy.
Yeah, he was.
Frank has a vested interest. Willie's just losing money.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
I have a quick, can you go back a couple slides? There's some numbers on there. I was there. On the RTC funds, on my notes I have here, we had allocated $385,000 of that. I don't know how that went from 100 to 200,000. Is that a mistake, or is that?
So, Councilmember Bottorff, at your last meeting, the council directed increasing the allocation from the general fund into the slurry seal project from 100 to 200,000. So that's what that reflects there. The 200 there reflects the increased allocation.
Okay, but see, when I look at the chart here, it's 1,185,000 is what we authorized, and in that it shows 100,000.
Increasing it, it was already at 100.
It was at 100 in the proposed budget, but in this table here that these were on top of. So, for example, you'll see the 220,000 is the increase to the library contribution. It's about 100,000 is the increase to streets beyond what was in the proposed budget.
We haven't voted on it yet, so it's still fluid.
Did I not see a discovery you made of $100,000 in an email report, supplemental information that could go towards City Hall improvements?
I'm not. No, I don't believe so.
I will dig back through the emails that Linda sent to me and see what I can find.
Right. There is fund balance in the facilities fund. I think the fund balance in the facilities fund that we're projecting based on the projects that are proposed and the transfers would be about $350,000 in the facilities fund overall. There's obviously numerous facility needs throughout the city. So I did have a few other points if we're ready to move forward on the presentation to follow up on items the council brought up at the last hearing.
Yes.
Okay. So Councilmember Bottorff at the last hearing asked about how much money we'd put into streets in the 5 years prior to the passage of Measure O. So staff went back and looked at the actual allocations to both the CIP and into roads. And so the 5-year average allocation to roads was just under $120,000 per year in the fiscal years leading up to the passage of Measure O. Secondarily, we discussed, and I'm not sure that we reached a conclusion, and as a staff, this would be something that I would like to wrap up. The current budget includes a proposal for a $1,000 per council member travel budget, and sort of looking for council direction about, is that the appropriate path to take? Would you rather see it as basically the system that we sort of operated in the past, which was a first come, first served travel budget? We could look at increasing the amount per travel council member and having a fixed per member budget, or just adopting it as we presented with $1,000 per. So a couple different options. As staff, I think we just want to know whether or not it's a fixed amount per council member, or if it's first come, first served, because I think it keeps it clear for everybody.
Madam Mayor, I would recommend that, we budgeted at $1,000 each, and it's per council member, but, just to keep tabs on who's going where and who wants to do what, that any council member can relinquish their budget to any other council member that needs more.
How about another option?
Sure.
I'm thinking, if there's a need to do this, I have no problem with that. I would rather see us double the maximum to 10,000 and just limit it to 2,000 per, and that's it. I don't think there's a need for more than 2,000 per. And if you do use it, that's fine. If you don't, and my sense is at the end of the day when we're done, we're going to end up around $4,000 to $5,000 spent. If someone is more inclined to go to something, like Stephanie mentioned about going to something and there wasn't enough money, if it was 2,000 per.
I think that's good.
And then, but it's like once you use your 2,000, you're done. Because if somebody doesn't use it, then our net impact on the city is still.
No, I could totally go along with that. Could you give us a little historical idea? Last year, how much of the council travel budget was utilized?
Well, some people haven't turned in their receipts for last year.
So what about the year before? I don't care. Give me a year. Give me a little love here. What do we spend in a year, on average?
So previously we were around 3,000 to 4,000 per year. In the last couple of years, we've been bumping up closer to the 5,000. Okay. Is that an accurate assessment?
I think you're right.
Maximum of 10, 2,000 each.
I think it's in the $4,000 to $5,000 range.
Great.
Well, I'd like to say that for the Cal League, I'm on a policy committee, and I've given up. You've told me there's no money in the program, so I've actually given up to at least 2 meetings that I should be at because they're not in Sacramento. I could drive up Sacramento, that's an easy one, but then going down south, I've said, okay, I don't want to pay for the hotel room. So I've actually given up meetings because of that.
Which you shouldn't do.
Doubling your budget to 2,000.
Yeah.
Seems to make sense.
Yeah, I have no problem.
Yeah. Okay.
We're good.
And my apologies, I was misreading the memo. It was the facility reserve budget decreased by $110,000, leaving $100,000 to pay for City Hall office improvements and community center parking lot repairs. Got it. Thank you. My mistake.
So with that, We have a multi-part staff recommendation, and the first is we propose amending the 17-18 budget pursuant to the direction that the Public Works Director recommended, which is to allocate $47,800 from the Measure F funds into the wharf repair piling project, and then allocating the funds from the wharf fund as well into the wharf repair project, authorizing the Public Works Director to enter into a contract not to exceed the $126,300 with Power Engineering to repair the buoy, the piles. I think you've identified a policy for council travel and training, and then ultimately approving the resolution to adopt the fiscal year 17-18 budget, capital improvement program, and we will incorporate in the increase in expenditures of $5,000 to bring the total travel and training budget for council up to 10, with the $2,000 per limit.
Madam Mayor, if I could, I'd like to make a motion on the wharf repair first, keep it separate from the budget, and then because the budget's going to take more conversation, I think the wharf repair is a no-brainer. But so I will motion to do the allocation for the wharf repair as stated by staff. That's my motion.
Second.
But I want, under discussion, I want to say this better be yet another wake-up call. We cannot waste time and let the wharf renovation languish. We cannot go through another potential winter like we had this year. We are going to lose that wharf. We have to get the engineering done ASAP. We have to bond around future Measure F funds and just fix the wharf, period. That should be primary. If we lose that wharf, I will be embarrassed to have endorsed Measure F.
Well, we still have the trestle. The trestle's still standing all these years.
Not our trestle.
No.
But
well said on the wharf.
Yeah.
I support that.
Thank you.
I totally agree.
I think that message is clear to staff.
So there's a motion.
Yeah.
And I
You
second it.
second already. Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And that included awarding the contract, right? Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. So.
Okay, the budget.
Okay, so that takes us to the budget. So if there's any additional questions or public comment, staff is prepared to help in any way we can.
Are there comments from the public? Would anyone like to speak on anything that they've heard or any requests that they have for how you'd like us to spend the money this year?
Yes.
We have
got her up
a
twice.
copy of the budget upstairs, and it's at the counter with a nice synopsis in the beginning, and we encourage people to come in and read it, take a look at it, and give us any comments that you have.
Okay, and I'm not really clear on where we are with this, at what point you ask for money, but a project that's near and dear to my heart is the beach, obviously, and the healthy ocean today. Great day. And I just, I feel like that there's no real atmosphere in the city for picking up trash or, not littering in the first place. It seems like there's a lot of, there's little signs here and there. There's lots of trash cans. And, yet I'm still picking things up, 5 feet from a trash can. I don't know. It just seems like that there must be some really creative ways to just get the message out that, pick up your trash, pack it out, whatever. There's just nothing like that in the village that I can see. So I would love to see some money allocated towards that kind of an effort.
Thank you. Thank you. Jacques.
Yeah. Where are we on the HOPE team that helps clean up the village?
Madam Mayor, Council Member Bertrand. So for those of you watching at home, we contract with Hope Services each and every year for a contract in the summer to help pick up trash throughout the village and on the beach. And you'll see that if you look under general fund expenditures, and we're going to do this on the fly and see whether or not I find it. They're organized by department, so we should see the contract within Public Works and the Hope Services contract. There it is. It's about 7 from the bottom on the Public Works contract, and it looks like it's $13,000 in the proposed budget.
Okay, and how much pickup is that actually? Especially since we have a tourist season coming up and we tend to get overwhelmed, and I think I did get a letter, I think everyone here got a letter of some really demonstrating how impacted our garbage cans are with all sorts of things, pizza boxes and tons of stuff.
So the contract with Help Services is for 5 days a week, which is what they work. It's not an option to add weekends in or anything like that. And they work 6 hours a day. And so they're going to start work on June 19th and work through the Art and Wine Festival.
Okay.
The only day they won't work in there is the 4th of July.
Okay, so basically right now we don't have that benefit, and after they come in place, we'll
Right.
see the benefit of
Yes.
trash pickup.
Yes, yeah.
6 hours.
But it is Monday through Friday, and they come in around 10 and work till about 4 in the afternoon.
Okay.
You could also hire JoJo to collect pizza boxes and help us out.
Hopefully, we're working on options for the pizza boxes. That's obviously a big issue. And
There's a refund on that, isn't there?
Yeah, you can get them turned in. We tried to get some pizza boxes in, but our stands for them. But we're working on continuing always. I think we'll be working on the pizza box issue.
Aren't there some stands that are supposed to be coming out? Didn't we finally?
We got some. They were the wrong size, so we're looking if there's another options.
Good idea, wrong size.
How old are the parking meters that we have to spend $50,000 to fix? That doesn't make me
So
very
the
happy.
oldest ones, which are the ones along the Esplanade in the village, are, I believe, 7 years old at this point, which is about their life expectancy in that kind of environment. What we're recommending is changing out all the faceplates, even the newer ones that are up here, so we have a consistent model for all the users. We do need to replace the ones that are along the Esplanade, which is like 4 or 5 of them that are really bad. And then as you get away from the ocean, they get a little better. But it's a high corrosion place and some fine electronics in there.
Are all the models like that, or is this not a good model for a seaside town?
No, I think it's the same thing we'd expect for any of them. It's all electronics, solid circuitry inside a steel cabinet that I think is subject to corrosion, and I don't think any of the other ones would have been any better. In fact, so the only ones that had a battery that was elevated, so if we did get water, it doesn't automatically short everything out.
One of the advantages to doing them all at once, this is sort of a live and learn moment for us, was that by implementing them over time, the faceplates that they were using changed over time. So the message that is displayed on each pay station has to be the same for our whole system. And so the instructions are based off one of the faceplate models. Unfortunately, not all faceplates have the exact same set of buttons. So some of the confusion you see by visitors is frankly well justified because it says hit the add time button to add time, and there's no add time button. There's only an add dollars button. So fixing the corrosion problem is one issue, but the second piece is having a consistent set of faceplates is of real value because then at least the message can correspond accurately to what's actually on the screen for each and every one of the base stations. And a question that I asked Steve when we first presented this was, what about other options? And I believe you told me that we had $350,000 worth of pay station at this point. Is that a?
Yeah.
So, understand that this is sort of the maintenance cost. And when at the end of the day, we saw roughly a 15%, maybe more bump in revenue from the pay stations, which is significantly more than and that's each and every year. That's significantly more than $50,000. So it is a maintenance cost. It is significant, but it is something that I think makes a lot of sense to do.
Jack?
Yeah. So we can't get the pickup program on the weekend? I mean, we probably get more tourists and stuff.
Self-services does not work on weekends.
Okay. So basically, it's up to the goodwill of people to put their garbage in the garbage can at that time.
Yeah. We do have a program that we're trying to start with Pizza My Heart. Aren't they going to buy us some pizza disposal?
That was the pizza.
That was the question about the box.
That's what Ed's been.
I'm sorry.
And I want to take a moment to actually thank Pizza My Heart because we've been working really hard with them and really cooperatively with their management to try to fix the problem. Just as a bit of background, the problems have been developing over the years with the bounty, the refund for the boxes, that in the winter when there were fewer people there, that the boxes would end up in the trash cans, and then people would go into the trash cans, pull everything out onto the sidewalk to get at the boxes. So in working in collaboration with Pizza My Heart this year, we ended up eliminating a lot of the boxes and just going down to the extra large size box. And suspending the bounty in the winter, which solved a lot of problems, but the problem is the extra large size box really ends up cramming up our trash cans. So Pizza My Heart, bless their hearts, they ordered special pizza box recycling bins, which they paid for, we delivered, we installed, and it turns out that they are slightly too small for the extra large pizza box. So we're continuing to research options, and I don't want to heap too much blame on Pizza My Heart, but because they've been great to work with and continue to help us try to find solutions to the issue.
No, Pizza Hut, they're special at Capitola.
Yeah.
Will those boxes be in anytime soon, or the new ones, or is it a long delay? Oh.
Oh, boy.
I know Larry wanted to talk.
A little more complicated.
Good evening. Unfortunately, that is the size they make. They're sending it to engineering. Why? So, just so you know, I know. I also mentioned the fact that I found a rectangle size container a bit odd for pizza boxes, and that's how they make them. So they have sent it off to see if they can easily make bigger ones for, I would think, make one for the largest pizza box you have, and then they all fit. But so it was a difficult learning experience. But I've been in communication with them.
Okay. Well, at least it's good to know what the problem is. Thank you.
All right.
It seems like the pizza boxes aren't really the problem. We're hearing from residents that it's the small trash. I mean, convincing people to be not the people they are is not something.
The point is very valid. People dig for the boxes, everything, and they throw everything out, and they don't pick it back up and put it in, and then it spreads, and so it's that appearance that it's all over the place. I mean, not to say that the point's valid. I mean, we could probably do something to improve our pickup. I don't know what that is, but I guess it's something we could do.
Well, and just to encourage more recycling. I mean, and make the recycling containers really attractive or something so that people will see it and that they'll maybe be more likely to go over there and put that box in the recycling container.
Well, I think the point that was made was it's more of a personal responsibility thing. If there's some way to encourage people to, pick up your own stuff, I mean, that's a valid point. Because I do notice that there's, on our busy weekends, I do see someone coming down and picking up the trash on the weekends and in the end of the day. And
I was going to add, we have Hope Services during the week, but on the weekends, we've actually gone to expanding Public Works services out there. Because our normal Public Works day starts at 6 in the morning, goes till 3 in the afternoon. Starting last year, we have somebody coming in later and working till 5, and their only focus during that time is trash pickup and emptying the trash cans. So we're trying to address it. It's a big issue, and there's a lot of trash, and it's hard. One of our problems is we can't drive vehicles out on the beach. It's just typically too crowded. If you look at the larger beaches, they're able to kind of create a roadway that they don't allow people to picnic in and stuff like that, so they can drive a vehicle out on the beach. I know that's what Santa Cruz does. I know that's what they do in state parks. Our beach is really too small to do that, so we ask our crews to try and get out, walk down the beach, fill up a bag, drag it back in, and that becomes more difficult.
What happened to our big bellies?
Our big bellies are similar to our pay stations. They are fried up at our corp yard, and Big Belly won't repair them.
I know Lisa Murphy looked for different recycling containers and could never quite find the right thing, but let's keep looking to see if there's something that's out there that's attractive.
It's a big issue, because what happens to so people know, if you get about 5 or 10% trash into a recycle bin, it's no longer, everything in there becomes trash. And I would say most of the time our recycle bins are getting emptied as trash because of that. So, and I don't know if that's what the bin looks like. I think that's just people not paying attention.
And it's too much work to sort it and take up the paper out?
Green Waste will not sort it out.
No, but I mean, can we do any pre-sorting?
We're not staffed up to go through all the garbage cans. And right now, the garbage cans that are along the S1 are emptied by Green Waste. They come in the morning and empty them. We then come through and supplement that, but we're just dumping the trash and try and get it up the courtyard. It's a large volume, and we don't have the time to sit there and sort through it.
Have we asked staff for suggestions on this? I mean,
I'm always asking them,
Yeah.
what the best way to go about this is.
Okay.
And, they came up with some ideas on how to deal with the trash on the beach and where to place the cans. That's why we get cans placed where they are. They're not all the way out into the middle of the beach. We try and keep them closer so it's easier for the crews to hand empty them. We're continuing, we continue
Okay.
working with the crews.
So they have good suggestions stuff?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to, thank you.
And I think council should know over time, and Steve, you can help me out here. When did we go to 7-day-a-week cruise?
So when I first started here 16 years ago, we didn't work weekends. I mean, literally, we would empty trash cans on Friday before we left and come back on Monday and empty them again. And there wasn't the problem is. So we've slowly evolved over time to now we are 7 days a week. And this year, for the first time, we went 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So we're out there every day, and it's mainly dealing with the trash along the beach. It's been about 3 years now that we've had full-time weekend crews. And then finally we went to full-time, not full-time, summer weekend crews. And this year we went to full-time weekend crews.
You have tongs and stuff like that?
They have lots of equipment, yes.
Well, they do a great job. Thank you. Thank you.
And back to the budget.
Yes. Okay, next topic.
Budget.
That's it. I mean, I've completed my presentation at this point. I'm available for questions about the budget or any other topics the council would like more information on.
Silly question. On the PERS contingency reserve, we have a revenue of $10,000. But on the contingency reserve, we have no revenue. So where is the PERS contingency reserve put such that we get a revenue of $10,000 out of $300,000?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Bertrand.
I just don't understand that.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So the city is limited in its investment vehicle opportunities pursuant to state law.
Right.
However, there's sort of two opportunities that we have that we've taken advantage of to invest in, frankly, more market-based opportunities, and that's both our OPEB trust, which is our trust fund to pre-fund retiree health care benefits, and this PERS trust fund as well. And so both of those are held by external entities. And is it PARS that does them? PARS is the PERS, and is PERS the OPEB, or is PARS? External entities manage them. So we're actually getting investment returns on both the OPEB trust and the PERS trust. And that was one of the reasons the Finance Advisory Committee recommended, I think it was this last year, establishing the PERS trust fund with PARS, because otherwise it was just sitting in the bank getting life for us. So our contingency reserve is an operating reserve, and so it's used for cash flow, and so both pursuant to state law, you can't invest it in equities or those types of investment vehicles, A, and B, it also needs to be liquid.
How about the emergency reserve?
Yeah, how about the emergency fund?
So this is an interesting question, and this reflects, I think, a little bit on kind of the point Steve was making about sort of the evolution of the city. When I came on as city manager, there wasn't enough money in the bank to really think about other types of investments, and this has been a point the treasurer's brought up several times, and I think it's something that we should look at. We just adopted an investment policy, you'll recall, in the consent calendar earlier this evening. And I think as our fund balances have grown over the years due to prudent decision-making by your city councils and your predecessors, we do have more reserves, and the need for the emergency reserve as an immediately liquid asset may have decreased over time. So I think that is something that the Finance Advisory could look into with our new finance director, is are there investment vehicles that might make sense where we could get potentially a little bit more return?
So we could take part of the emergency reserve and have a different investment consideration for that and maybe make some money on it.
It's certainly an option. I wouldn't want to get people's hopes up too high. I mean, the government's ability to invest is relatively limited, and we're probably talking about a difference between LAIF and, which is, 0.000. Yeah, and, 1%. So we're not talking about significant returns. The more significant returns end up in these trust funds, both the OPEB and the PERS trust fund.
So, might be
Nevertheless, 1% of $1 million is revenue.
Yes, right. Yeah.
And should be pursued if it's a viable option.
Any other questions about that? No. Well, one of the things I would like the council to look at is adding some money for the city hall renovations, the office minor renovations, because we do have money in that account, and there's projected to be a estimated balance next year, and projected to use some, but there's 339 in it, and we're going to use 110. But I would say if the employees come up with something that's over $25,000, let's look at that seriously, because this is we don't want to do this too piecemeal. It's going to be piecemeal, but let's not do it. Let's not put a tiny Band-Aid on it now when we could put a bigger Band-Aid on it.
But I propose that we budget $50,000 and use the facilities fund to fund it, and we have yet to see what the employees have come up with, so...
And it may not be that much,
Right.
or maybe more, but it gives them something more to work with.
I could second that if that's a motion.
And my other dream would be, we're not going to do it this year, but we'll do it next year, I hope, is I would really like to add on another 10 or 12 feet to the museum, so that the museum director could have a real office and a real conference table to have real meetings with real people and researchers. And when Frank retires and we get a new museum director and he goes and looks at that office, he's probably going to say, unless he's crazy, he's probably going to say, are you kidding? So we could punch out that wall and add another 10 or 12 feet and lose that one parking place and create a really nice little office for the next museum director. And I think, and for the research person that comes in to help him, or the research person he's meeting with, and to have a more professional office to work in, because he's in a closet right now. So I'd just like us to look at that. I don't know how much that would cost. I know when we did the bathrooms at the parking lot, that was like $10,000 or $20,000, and this was like $10,000 or $20,000. So everything's expensive, but I think it would really be nice for the museum director, for the museum in general, to spend a little money there. We've never spent any money there, and make it so that it'll be an attractive job for someone. And it's the same argument I make upstairs, to have our wonderful new employee go upstairs. I'd like it to look nicer. So that's my point.
What is the history of that building?
That house was moved here. It was a private residence in Live Oak, and Phil Walker bought it, moved it here, and established the museum. And they added on that little cupola, and they painted it red to look like a schoolhouse.
Yeah, that's
But it
the
was a
thing
little
that
house.
confused me. Yeah, okay.
And one day when I was working in the museum, when I was volunteering in the museum, a lady came in and said this was our family home.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the presence to get her name, phone number, and email, et cetera, et cetera. I figured, Carolyn must know her. And Carolyn didn't. And so we lost that opportunity to interview her about which room was this, where was the bedroom, where's the bathroom, where's the kitchen, and what was it like in this little house. That would have been fun to have interviewed her about that and talked to her about more of the history. So anyway, that's just something to think about for the future. It doesn't have to, it doesn't have to be a $100,000 project. It can be something modest, but I just don't I don't want to leave it in that condition for very much longer, because it's not really professional, I don't think.
I'd like to move the budget as presented with the one amendment of increasing City Hall renovations from 25 to 50 to come from the facilities fund.
I'll second that.
Other discussion?
Yeah, I'm not really a big fan of moving money out of the facilities fund, because I was under the impression that this council was making a commitment towards trying to improve the community center. And I know that price tag there is going to be closer to about $500,000. And now that, we're looking for different sources of revenue, depleting that fund by any, I wouldn't support, because I think we're trying to make a commitment with the school district to extend our lease, which is our priority, and that's based on a pro forma type of operation. And I'm thinking, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. City Manager, but isn't that about $500,000 is what we think that what we need to do to get where we want to be.
But does it need to be all
But
done at
the
once?
100,000 is our first baby step, and now we're offering that up to the school district to see what we see in return.
I understand.
It's very incremental.
I just, right, I know that, but I'd like to be in a position where, this fund, we don't usually put a lot of money into our facilities fund. I don't know, how much did we add into it this year? Did we increase it by? Or are we just drawing out of that fund?
We're appropriating $110,000 in this year's proposed budget.
Okay.
So, yes, this would take us into a decreasing fund balance by adding $25,000.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, our commitment when we sat here was all ahead full with the community center, and I feel like branching off and trying to do what I call Band-Aid repairs here, and I'm not a fan of that.
So, I'm going to offer a little bit of perspective. I think the city is going to have a larger conversation about this facility and the museum included, the parking lot out front, in the relatively near future. The roof is going to need to be replaced. It's an aging facility, and we're going to need to make a decision about, do we invest in it or do we do something else? And so, I mean, I think that there was a little bit of that. I sensed that from the council when we talked about fixing out in front, repaving the parking lot, fixing some of the trip hazards, that there was some concerns about kind of what was the long-term plan. So, and I think Councilmember Bottorff's point is well taken, is the community center is a real priority for our community. A lot of people touch it and feel it. And I'm a little bit hesitant to kind of piecemeal approach this building. I think we need to maybe have more of a strategic decision about what we're going to do and how we're going to invest our money. And the community center is going to be a priority, and it will suck up, I think, any resources we're able to push towards it in the near term. So, just food for thought.
I still think we can improve the upstairs. If you were a woman, you'd think differently. A woman looking at upstairs says worn out.
I don't want to dispute that point. In fact, I completely agree, and I think that the $25,000 is probably a really warranted investment in the space that can, the best bang for the buck, right? There are improvements, there's low-hanging fruit. I think you've identified a number of really important things that can be done. The question just becomes, how best to invest the next dollar, right? That's what public budgeting is about. And I think that the $25,000 is certainly warranted, and there's improvements that really can improve the quality of the space. But I do think that at some point, we start to go down a path of having a larger conversation about
That's
City
right,
Hall.
but
And I don't think that this is the time to do that.
But we also didn't commit to $500,000 on a piece of property that we don't own. So, I'd like to get some answers to that before we talk about those kind of big numbers, because that was not my impression, is, spending that kind of money right now. So this money's here, it's available, we can use it.
Well, I don't know that it's available. I mean, we can earmark money for all kinds of different funds, and I think we did make a commitment to, like the city manager mentioned, the community center is something that's used by the public, and we have an obligation to provide services, and I think that in order to extend our lease, that when I was on the Breakfast Club meeting with the school district, we were committed to this plan to say we were going to invest in this building, and that would generate us to be able to extend that lease, because that's a building that all of our residents use. We touch that building a lot. And some of the needs there, the HVAC system, the roof, the interior fixtures, I mean, I believe that it's going to be somewhere close to $500,000, and we don't generally put a lot of money into our facilities funds, and we've got other projects, capital projects that we're going to be investing in. I mean, I go along with the city manager's recommendation. I would love to have us develop some kind of a subgroup to talk about, okay, what do we want to do with this building here going down the road, and and not just go up there and say we're going to change these lights or this window. How about develop a plan to, okay, if we're going to stay here and this is it, how much money and how do we incrementally want to do that? But we haven't had that discussion.
I know, but I'm talking about fixing something that's been broken for a long time and wanting to make it nicer for our employees now and have a more attractive place to work than
we already have. Do we just put money in there? Isn't there
money?
I'm
just not sure 25,000 is going to go far enough. So, is the motion for 50? The motion is for 50.
It's the additional 25 to up to 50, depending on the staff's recommendations. So I'm not saying I want to spend $50,000 up there, want to be able to, but I don't think we're going to go there with the cosmetic changes that are recommended. I'm trying to speak to the mayor's desires.
Jacques.
So I understand some things are in the planning stage right now, like lights and carpet or painting. I'm not too sure, after the meeting that you had with staff. And I don't know what the budget is for what is being proposed at this point. Is there any answer to that question at this point you could share?
I'm going to look to Larry to maybe help out, because Larry helped facilitate the conversations, has been working on
They've
the
been working
lighting
on
and
this.
different
I'd
efforts.
just like to hear what, how far they've gone.
So, Madam Mayor, council members, we kind of just at this point went through the basics of what the staff's desires were to kind of improve the facility. We've kind of ranked them on priority. We have started the conversation with Ecology Action to work on lighting, which might be outside of this, where we can integrate, to put in LEDs, which would help, because that was a big issue, is the quality of light. It may not, that may not improve the looks of the fixtures, but it would definitely improve the quality of light. So there were a whole list. So we didn't kind of, depending on what was budgeted, we were then going to kind of sit down again and kind of revisit what the priorities would be for staff up there. So we hadn't gotten into the details of each budget item.
So maybe you could bring that back. So do the lighting first and see how that affects the environment.
Well, I definitely think that will affect things, but there were some smaller. It's just depending on how much was budgeted, we could figure out what the next step
They'll
would
spend
be.
whatever we give them, is the answer.
Well, possibly, but there may be, if the desire from the staff was like, you know what, we've got the lighting, we've painted at this point.
New window.
Yeah, I mean,
That on the
things like
list, yeah.
that. But those are maybe considered repairs as well. So there wasn't a strong. There was a strong kind of sense of overall making it a nicer facility, even things like artwork. That sort of thing to kind of get consistent, so people felt like it was maybe a more professional environment.
Okay, so yeah, thanks. I just sort of feel like I'm being hit with more and more things to spend money on, and we haven't even gotten to the point of dealing with the community center, and that's a slow process. Mike's alluding to the fact that we're working towards an agreement with the school district. And I kind of like to see where that goes. I'm on that group too, and I know it's a slow process. We have a relatively new superintendent, and he's trying to come up to speed with how to deal with this issue. And so I kind of like to see where that goes, and give them a chance to come to a solution that we could all work together on. Also, I don't have a clear sense of what Jamie, you're talking about in terms of the needs of the city hall. So at this point, I'm sort of fuzzy about it. What kind of work do we need to do here? Is it like the building's falling down, or we need somewhat major repairs? So I haven't seen a proposal about that tells me exactly what you're thinking. To your credit, you're thinking about it, but this is not the time, I guess, to bring it forward. So I welcome that proposal at some point.
I think, we've come down to debating $25,000 in a $16 million budget.
Right.
If this is the only thing stopping us from passing this budget, none of us should be up here.
I appreciate that comment, and in that light, what I don't, really appreciate is we've had 2 budget sessions prior to this where we brought everything on the table. Right. And I was ready to come tonight and vote on a budget, and all of a sudden at the last minute things are introduced after we've had 2 sessions when we're here talking about what we all want, what we all need, and we sat here and, whether we got what we wanted or not, the numbers come, and it's like, I came in tonight, even though fundamentally, you all know that I'm against taking any money out of the general fund when we have other funds we can take, and that's just a fundamental belief. But believe it or not, I was coming in here tonight ready to endorse the budget, okay? Because I'm thinking, here it is. I'm not really big on exercise equipment, and I'm not big on some of the other things that are in here, but it's like, we had the 2 sessions, we worked through this, we came here, and so now at the last minute, say, right before we close this, let's just do this. Okay, so I'm not, and especially when it goes into, like I said, our facilities fund, which is a broad. There's all kinds of facilities that we have, and we have facilities that are all in need of repair. And there was a plan for what we were going to do at the community center. There is no plan for what we're doing here, and I would embrace having a discussion about what the plan would be and whether we could commit to that. But at this point, I came in ready to vote on a budget. I was not going to stifle that, and so it's not about 25,000, Mike, but 25 becomes 50, 75, 100.
I totally get that. And maybe then the question should go to the mayor and see how she feels about that number staying at 25 instead of 50. Because, it's either one vote or the other. And at this point, I'm very soft on this, frankly, because I was ready to vote on the budget. And I was just playing to the mayor's desire to make more money available upstairs. If that's not the total will of the council, I can be amended on my motion.
But the way I view it, it's only June 8th. And so I view it as early, even though we've had a couple of discussions. We don't usually do this till the end of June, and we usually bat things around quite a bit. So that doesn't bother me, to bat things around, because that's what we usually do, and we go back and forth. And I bring up the newsletter, and I bring up all the usual things. I didn't bring it up this year. But it's fine. I think it's fine to talk about anything we want to at these meetings. That's what we're here for, John.
So, if I hear Mike correctly, we're taking the same approach that we're doing with the exercise equipment. So we're saying that we got 25 definitely there, and it could be up to 50. But we're asking Larry and staff to come forward with a proposal. I mean, no one's going to say 50 if it's something that doesn't really make sense. And I think the staff has thought about this, and they're coming up with some of the ideas that they would like. I think it's very important for us to, and I think I agree with Stephanie on this, to have a work environment that staff feels comfortable working in. And are there things that they need to have addressed? Lighting's already been addressed. Let's see where that takes them. And, if there's other things, then, come back through Larry or Jeff, Jamie, and tell us what they are. And so I guess we have 25 to 50, depending on what that proposal is.
I think we ought to decide and give them some direction. That's too vague for them to have to.
But I don't know what they want at this point, except for lighting. And
well, then let's say up to 50.
Yeah, well, that's what Mike said, I believe. So we sort of addressed some of the last meeting we had. There were some items on there that we said we weren't sure that, let's say, I like exercise equipment for seniors. But I was willing to say that, let's reach out through the Park and Rec Department and try to judge the community. Is this something they want? Okay. And if that feedback is there, that they want it, then maybe we go ahead. If the feedback's not there, so I'm using the same analogy, and I think that's what Mike is doing for the improvements upstairs for the work environment. And so I'd like to see, what the people that we call our staff that provide the services for the city of Capitola would like to see up there. And, Larry's only talked about lighting so far, maybe some painting, but that's a little fungy except for the lighting. So I'm waiting for that to see what it is.
And they're waiting to see how much money we're going to allocate to it.
Yeah, well, it's 25 to 50. I think that's what Mike put on the table, and I think that gives some room to do quite a bit of work.
And the exercise equipment's a perfect analogy.
Yeah, because I've been looking for exercise equipment for about 2 years, but I totally get it from last time's discussion that maybe this is not the thing people in this community would like. And so I said, okay, fine. If that's not what they like, then we'll come up with something else to meet senior needs.
Kristen, you want to weigh in?
No. I agree with, again, I agree with everything that's being said. I understand the need for improvements. I am also concerned that we're going to spend money on improvements and then not too far down the road undo them all in a larger plan for either improving the building or whatever we may do with this building. And please excuse my ignorance here, as the learning curve in a first-time public budget is quite sharp. But am I understanding, where'd it go? We're looking at the facilities reserve, correct? Mm-hmm. So if we do not move money from it tonight in the budget we're approving, it'll still be there, right?
Yes.
It doesn't mean we can never move it.
Right.
Right, move it any time.
And we don't have to spend it all either.
Yeah.
So.
That's a good point.
Absolutely right. So we can make. So what I'm thinking is, Larry comes back. I mean, if there's proposals that really make sense, from the staff standpoint, and he comes back with something that's been considered, then we could deal with it at that point too. And I think Stephanie is trying to impress upon us that, from her standpoint, and she's been up at City Hall for many years now, she thinks that it really needs some work. And I think all of us agree with that. It's just how much work and what the proposal is to address that need.
And I don't think we're going to do anything with this building for 5 or 10 years. We're working on the library right now with our money. And we're not going to have that kind of extra money for the community center, I don't think either, or to redo this whole building, anytime in the near future. We just don't have the money for that. So it's a great idea to plan for, and a great idea to look at, but I don't think in the near future. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Does that still stand? Any other discussion? Mike made the motion.
And the motion is to amend with $50,000.
Up to $50,000 for City Hall improvements.
And the 5K increase in the travel budget.
That's correct.
Any other?
Which is not unlike the City Hall improvements, which is, we don't expect to spend it all.
Oh, I have one more request. I'm sorry, Ed. I would like to perhaps buy a couple more police decoys. We used to have one, and it worked. We'd put it on Capitola Road or whatever, behind somebody's bushes.
We're talking about the unused police cars, not police mannequins.
It was cardboard.
Wait, it was a cardboard police car?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't remember.
And it worked.
I don't. Wait, I remember using cars that weren't in service and parking them.
We had a paper one.
Maybe we could get the police chief to weigh in on that.
Anyway, so that I put that on my wish list, my request list, to get a couple of those to maybe that'll help slow down speeders everywhere.
It's kind of funny. I was walking down Monterey Avenue one day, and someone was getting out of their car talking to their wife, and he said, This town has more police decoys. And I said, what do you mean? He explained exactly what you're saying about how we see police cars everywhere.
What city?
Talking about Capitola.
We don't have that thing anymore.
Well, this guy was talking to his wife. He was telling this story to his wife.
Oh.
I couldn't believe it.
Okay.
I know.
Any other comments? Then we will vote. All in favor?
Do you want
a roll call?
vote?
Roll call.
Councilmember Peterson?
Aye.
Councilmember Termini?
Aye.
Councilmember Bertrand?
Aye.
Councilmember Bottorff?
No.
Mayor Harlan?
Aye. Any other discussion? I have one oral communication. Are we there yet?
So
I'm there.
So we will be adjourning and then reconvening as a successor agency. And before we do that, I really want to acknowledge Mark and all the work he's done. He's really stepped in at a tough time for the city, and he's done terrific work in helping prepare this budget and refine it and get the numbers just right. So I really want to publicly acknowledge him and just thank him for all the help he's done for the city.
Thanks to
You
everybody.
did a great job, Mark. Thank you. Very, very nicely done.
Yeah, you came
Wonderful
to work one
job.
day, and then all of a sudden you got dumped on your shoulders, right? Is that basically it?
Good job. My request is for planning and building the new taqueria that finally opened up next to the former Bridge Club. Check their parking. They have like 3 handicap parking places, and then across the way there's like 3 handicap parking places for the business. And I don't see any regular parking or it's signed or anything there for that restaurant. So they need to fix their mark their parking lot, stripe the parking lot. And then when you go out of the driveway, if there's a car parked there on the street, you cannot see to the left. So that needs to be red curbed there. Thank you.
They have excellent food.
Well, yeah, speaking about the taqueria, I went there the other day, and it was great because it was all neighbors in there. So I'm sitting there talking. They walked down. The guy was walking down the street, and it was a quick one to bring dinner back to home. And I'm sitting there talking with everyone. It was just absolutely great, and it would have been more crowded except it was a little overcast. But apparently, it's a lot of fun. The daughter's there. That came to help launch the thing.
Family affair. Okay, I'm going to adjourn the Capitola City Council meeting and reconvene as the successor agency. We have a very short agenda tonight. We'll note that all the directors are here and there are no additional materials. And would anyone like to address us from the public to comment on anything? Then we'll go to the consent calendar. We have no items. Then general government items, we have 1 to adopt the budget for this year's 17 and 18.
Madam Mayor, council members, I have a very short presentation for you. As the council is well aware, we're going through the process of unwinding the redevelopment agency. There's very few obligations from the redevelopment agency that remain to be paid. I think the most significant of which will be the remaining $47,000 back to the city for the city's original loan to the redevelopment agency when it was formed. So that's programmed in this year. Other than that, it's just revenue in, revenue out to pay the outstanding obligations of the successor agency. With that, I'm available for questions.
Any questions? Would anyone like to make a motion?
Motion to adopt.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Just one other announcement. I went to the sanitation district, the Zone 5 meeting this week, and asked them for a breakdown of the maintenance projects in Capitola, to give me a list of those. And so we'll see what they come up with, because we have a couple $100,000 in a maintenance budget, and for clearing drains. I'd like to know if they've ever done any in Capitola, or ever will do any in Capitola. So that's all for us tonight. Thank you all very much, and have a wonderful rest of your evening. Good night.